In today's documentary on dark bonds, we will dive into a crime that shocked the entire world, not just for its brutality, but for the sheer deception that unraveled along the way. A deception that not only destroyed the life of the victim, but also shattered the careers of several officers who worked tirelessly to solve the mystery behind this case. As always, please note that the details of this documentary may include some content that some may find sensitive. Viewer discretion is advised. Finally, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. I have a dream of reaching 1,000 subscribers before Christmas, and you can help me make it happen. Now, let's start our true crime documentary. Falling in love and running away to marry the person of their dreams is something most teenage girls fantasize about. Caroline Crouch was no different. A young high school girl, only 15 years old, found herself captivated by a 27-year-old pilot with a good income. He would fly his helicopter over her school, winning her heart. The two ran away and got married. What seemed like a perfect fairy tale romance quickly spiraled into a crime that shocked the world. On the morning of Tuesday, May 11th, 2021, at around 4:30 a.m., a man named Babis Anagnostopoulos, known as Babis, woke up to a horrific scene. At the time of the incident, he was renting a 2-story home in the quiet suburb of Glika, located on the outskirts of Athens, Greece, a town of no more than 10,000 residents. There was no time for Babis to react. 3 men wearing hoods broke into the house and overpowered him. Armed with guns, they didn't waste any time. They tied him up and covered his eyes with tape. Helpless, he could only listen as the intruders turned their attention to his wife, a 19-year-old girl named Caroline Crouch. Their 11-month-old daughter, who had been sleeping nearby, woke up to the commotion. The intruders, speaking in Greek and Albanian accents, repeatedly demanded to know where the money was. Caroline had no idea that what seemed like a robbery would soon turn into her murder. Caroline Crouch was born on July 12, 2001, in Athens, to retired engineer David Crouch and Susan Della Cuesta. When she was only 8 years old, the family moved to Alonissos, a Greek island in the northern Aegean Sea. The island spans approximately 477 square kilometers and is home to about 90,000 residents. They moved there because of David and Susan's love for the coastal lifestyle. Caroline grew up surrounded by the sea. She had a passion for diving and swimming from a young age. She met her future husband, Babis, during a Good Friday procession in 2017. At that time, Babis was a commercial pilot, while Caroline was just 15 years old. 3 years later, the two married in Portugal on July 15, 2019. A few days before her murder, Babis and Caroline had purchased a plot of land. They planned to build their dream home there for themselves and their infant daughter. To help buy the land, Caroline had received 50,000 euros as a gift from her parents. For the construction costs, the couple had around 10,000 euros hidden in their home. At the time, many people in Greece avoided relying heavily on banks due to the country's frequent financial instability. It was common for families to keep cash at home as a safer option. Caroline likely followed this practice, never imagining the events of May 11th would unfold. Babis, Caroline, and their daughter endured terrifying moments as the intruders demanded to know where the money was. Hoping to end the nightmare, Babis revealed the location. It was an unusual hiding spot. The money was stashed inside a Monopoly game box. The intruders opened it and took everything the couple had saved to build their dream home. But it wasn't enough for the perpetrators. They continued searching the house for more valuables. Desperation grew as Babis and Caroline pleaded for their lives and the life of their child. Babis could hear Caroline screaming as one of the intruders threatened their 11-month-old daughter with a gun. Though blindfolded, he struggled to free himself. The rope around his neck was so tight that he drifted in and out of consciousness. Eventually, he passed out. When he regained awareness, the house was silent. The intruders had fled. The only sound he could hear was the heart-wrenching cries of his baby daughter. About 30 minutes later, Babis managed to crawl to his phone and use his nose to dial emergency services.
Your video will look great, Mom. Who is there?
Through muffled cries, with tape covering his mouth, he begged for help and gave his location. The operator struggled to understand him, but Babis managed to say, "Burglars broke into the house." It had been an hour and a half since the intruders broke in. At around 6 a.m., paramedics arrived. What they saw was horrifying. The kitchen and living room were ransacked. Drawers were pulled open, and clothes and belongings were scattered everywhere. Among the chaos lay the open Monopoly box, the same box where the couple had hidden their money. A security camera rested on the living room couch, torn from the wall, with its memory card missing. On the staircase, the family's 7-month-old husky puppy was hanging, strangled with its own leash. Babis was found on the bedroom floor, his eyes and mouth taped shut, the tape extending tightly around his neck. His hands and feet were bound behind his back. On the bed lay Caroline, face down, motionless. Beside her, their baby cried, clapping her tiny hands as if trying to wake her mother. Caroline was pronounced dead on the scene. The baby appeared uninjured, but was visibly shaken, caught in the terror of what had unfolded around her. Paramedics quickly noticed Caroline's pale skin, an indication that she had already passed. When Babis was freed from his restraints and saw his wife's lifeless body, he appeared to enter a state of visible shock. The police wasted no time ensuring the safety of the infant and began questioning Babis. Based on his account and the state of the crime scene, it was determined that 4 men were involved. The police theorized that 3 men entered the house, while a 4th acted as a lookout. The sequence of events leading up to the murder and escape was pieced together. The attackers approached the house via a dirt path leading to the back entrance. Unable to open the back door, they removed the security pins from a basement window to gain entry. Once inside, they killed the family dog, Roxy, using its leash. They then stormed into the master bedroom, where Babis and Caroline were sleeping. After ransacking the house, they found and stole the money hidden inside the Monopoly game box. Before fleeing, they murdered Caroline by suffocating her with a pillow. Due to Babis losing consciousness repeatedly, the attackers likely assumed he was dead and left the house, believing they had eliminated all witnesses. Caroline's death was far from quick. The attack on her lasted around 6 minutes. Bruises on her body showed signs of resistance, while cuts on her lips and tongue suggested sharp objects might have been used. However, no evidence of sexual assault was found. Despite the extensive damage to the couple's home, the intruders left little physical evidence. One piece of notable evidence was a hood left behind by one of the attackers. Based on Babis's account, the hood likely fell during his struggle to resist. Though seemingly small, this clue allowed Babis to describe one of the intruders. From his details, the attacker was dark-skinned, overweight, and tall. Despite his disoriented state, Babis also managed to identify 2 weapons used during the invasion. According to his statements, the attackers had a black handgun and a silver Colt revolver. Investigators found that the perpetrators escaped with 10,000 euros in cash and 20,000 euros worth of jewelry. Police concluded that the crime was carried out by professional criminals who had monitored the family and waited for the right moment to strike. A police spokesperson described the crime as brutal and violent, carried out by individuals lacking empathy and showing antisocial tendencies. As the investigation progressed, multiple theories emerged, shedding light on the possible motives behind the crime. One critical question stood out. If the motive was robbery, why was the murder necessary? Some speculated that the attackers were under the influence of drugs and unable to control their actions. Others believed that Caroline might have recognized them or seen their faces, prompting them to silence her. Considering that Caroline held a black belt in kickboxing, it was possible she resisted, forcing them to act violently to subdue her. She may have screamed when they threatened her infant daughter, pushing them to take drastic measures. While these were just theories, investigators were certain of one thing: the attack was premeditated. The attackers knew about the money hidden in the house, suggesting an inside tip. Following this lead, police questioned people in Babis and Caroline's close circle. In addition, security footage from nearby homes and businesses was reviewed. Through this footage, investigators identified a dark-colored vehicle and a motorcycle spotted circling near the couple's house on the morning of the crime. Caroline Crouch was laid to rest 3 days after her murder, on the Greek island of Alonissos, the place her parents loved and where she had grown up. During the funeral, Babis paid tribute to his wife, saying he was lucky to have met her, luckier to have been loved by her, and even luckier to have her as the mother of their child. He added that their daughter would grow up without remembering her mother, but he promised that Caroline, his joy of life, would remain close to him through their child. As Caroline was being laid to rest, the police stopped a car in northeastern Greece during a routine inspection. Inside was a 36-year-old Georgian man named Georgi Haridisveli. He was heading toward the Bulgarian border. The man presented his passport, which was quickly discovered to be forged. Who was this man, and how was he connected to Caroline? The man was identified as Georgi Haridisveli, a violent criminal with numerous prior convictions. He was wanted for 12 burglaries across Athens in the past 6 months. What made him the prime suspect was that 3 of these crimes had occurred in Babis and Caroline's neighborhood. One particular case from December stood out. Georgi and 3 accomplices had broken into a house through a back window, using the same method as in Babis and Caroline's home. During that burglary, they dragged a woman by her hair and threatened to slit her throat. They escaped with 10,000 euros in cash and jewelry. Another incident, attributed to the gang, occurred on March 7th, just 2 months before the attack on Caroline and Babis. In that case, 4 individuals, including an elderly couple and their housekeeper, were tied up and robbed of money and other valuables. The similarities between these crimes and the attack on Caroline were striking. Even more damning was the resemblance between Georgi and the sketch Babis had described to police. This mounting evidence, Georgi's violent history, his attempted escape, and his physical similarity to the sketch, convinced authorities they had found the real suspect. Georgi was arrested and interrogated for 4 days. Harsh physical methods were used to extract information. He was questioned about how he reached the crime scene, how he entered the house, and whether he had killed Caroline. Despite sustaining injuries that left him unconscious at one point, Georgi denied any involvement with Caroline Crouch. Eventually, evidence cleared him of the crime, and he was exonerated. This failure led to the demotion of 3 officers from Athens' homicide investigation team. With no leads, the police turned their attention to a local Albanian crime syndicate. Starting with a list of 100 names, they narrowed it down to 10 known criminals from a red list of suspects. Images of these individuals were shown to Babis, though no additional details were shared with him. As time dragged on, solving the case proved more difficult than anticipated. The public grew impatient. Racially charged crimes were rising, and the people of Athens lived in constant fear. The lack of progress in Caroline's case, even with a significant cash reward offered, left the city disheartened. Meanwhile, Babis maintained a strong media presence.
Να μην γίνει σε κανέναν άλλον ποτέ ξανά, τίποτα άλλο. Τα παιδιά ξέρουν τη δουλειά τους, θα τους πιάσουν και αυτό που πέρασα εγώ και η οικογένειά μου και η οικογένεια της γυναίκας μου να μην το περάσει ξανά κανείς ποτέ.
Τους παρακαλέσατε?
Τους παρακαλέσαμε, τους είπαμε ότι έχουμε, πού θα βρουν τα χρήματα και...
Και παρόλα αυτά, πόση ώρα μείναν μέσα?
Συγγνώμη, πρέπει να φύγω. Να είστε καλά.
Συλληπιτήρια.
He expressed support for the police and spoke about the pain of losing his wife. On social media, he answered questions and thanked followers for their support. However, inconsistencies in his story began to surface as investigators delved deeper into the case. One red flag was the point of entry. Babis claimed the attackers had entered through the basement window, but it was too small for the build of the suspect he described. He also stated the intruders had ransacked the house, yet neighbors reported hearing no unusual noises that night, except the distressed cries of the family's puppy. No fingerprints or DNA evidence were found in the house, further casting doubt on Babis's version of events. He also claimed that the intruders had removed the memory card from the security camera, but data from the camera revealed a shocking detail. The card had been removed at 1:20 a.m., hours before the alleged break-in. Even more damning was evidence from Caroline's smartwatch, which monitored her heart rate. At 3:58 a.m., the data showed she was sleeping. At 4:05 a.m., her heart rate spiked by 50%, indicating extreme physical and emotional stress. By 4:11 a.m., her heart had stopped. This was before the time Babis claimed the intruders entered the house. The timeline painted a very different picture from Babis's account, and the cracks in his story began to widen. On the surface, Babis's story unraveled with shocking evidence. His fitness app on his smartphone revealed that he had been moving during the time he claimed to be tied up. Investigators also attempted to replicate his claim of dialing emergency services using his nose, but no one succeeded in doing so. Further scrutiny uncovered that Caroline had attempted to book a hotel room for herself and her daughter on the night of her murder. A text message to a friend revealed she had been threatening to leave Babis. Their relationship had always seemed like a dream to outsiders. When Babis met Caroline, he was on holiday in Alonissos, where his mother worked as a teacher at Caroline's school. He was charming, intelligent, and financially secure. His grand gestures, like flying a helicopter over her school, enchanted Caroline. It seemed like the beginning of a fairy tale. For Caroline, however, it soon turned into a nightmare. Caroline believed Babis was her perfect match. She told her family she was happy. After a year and a half of dating, Babis proposed. Caroline, still a minor, turned 18 just 3 days later. The couple married and settled in Ghana. In the early years of their marriage, Caroline attended college in Athens, while Babis continued his career as a pilot. On social media, they appeared to be deeply in love, leading an enviable life filled with joy. But Caroline's diary revealed a darker truth. In 2019, she wrote about a major argument with Babis, mentioning that she planned to leave him and go to her sister, but felt uncertain about whether she could truly end their relationship. Over time, Babis became more controlling and manipulative. Their unconventional wedding, which excluded a traditional Greek celebration with friends and family, was an early attempt by Babis to isolate Caroline. This isolation continued when they returned home. Babis was the sole breadwinner, while Caroline remained a college student without an independent income. Even money her mother sent her was taken by Babis. In her diary, Caroline wrote, "I love Babis so much that I can't leave him, even though this relationship hurts me." In a tearful confrontation, she admitted wanting to leave, but stayed because she was pregnant. "I stayed with him so my daughter wouldn't grow up without both her parents," she added. On July 2020, she wrote, "Today my baby turned 1 month old, and it's also the day I told Babis I wanted to leave. I feel awful." Her diary entries hinted at a life of growing despair, with references to a home in Halandri, Athens. What began as a fairy tale for Caroline descended into an abyss of pain, fear, and helplessness, a trap she could not escape, one that eventually led to her death. In the hours before her murder, phone records showed heated text exchanges between Babis and Caroline. Their messages reflected a deteriorating relationship, full of tension and emotional turmoil. Investigators confronted Babis with evidence that exposed glaring contradictions in his story. After an 8-hour interrogation, Babis finally broke and confessed, though his confession was riddled with lies. Babis claimed the fight began on the night of May 10th, the evening before Caroline's death. He said they argued about their daughter, as Caroline was determined to leave and take the child with her. Babis alleged that this made him lose control, calling his daughter his entire life. He claimed Caroline threw the baby into her crib and demanded he leave the house. He alleged she became violent, pushing and punching him, which caused him to snap. In his words, he lost all sense of reason and suffocated her with a pillow, using his full body weight, ultimately killing her. It was a cold-blooded murder, committed in front of their 11-month-old daughter. Babis admitted he briefly considered disposing of Caroline's body, but realized it wasn't feasible. Instead, he staged the crime to look like a burglary. To make it appear convincing, he killed the family dog, Roxy, tied himself up, and placed his daughter beside her mother's lifeless body before calling emergency services. Babis expressed remorse during his confession, claiming he deserved punishment and owed everyone an apology. Yet he also tried to shift blame onto Caroline, suggesting her behavior drove him to instability and aggression. The undeniable truth, however, was that their daughter would grow up without a mother, her life irreparably scarred by the man Caroline once loved. The case quickly earned the title, "The Crime That Fooled the World." Babis was so confident in his ability to evade justice that he didn't even bother to dispose of crucial evidence. In May 2022, He was charged with premeditated murder, obstruction of justice, lying to authorities, and animal cruelty.
Πράσινη μπλούζα! Πίσω με την πράσινη μπλούζα! Ακούγεσαι κανονικά. Μίλα μου λίγο. Αυτός είναι. Πότε.
He was convicted on all counts, bringing closure to one of the most shocking cases that had ever shaken Greece and the world. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe for more true crime stories. See you in the next video.